The road was loud with money and silence at the same time. Engines purred, boots struck dust that had been beaten flat by years of cattle drives, and the sun poured gold over everything it touched, as if blessing the ones who already had more than enough. Before this story begins, take a second. If stories that break your heart and rebuild it again mean something to you, subscribe to our channel, share this story with your friends, and become part of a family that believes words can still change lives. What you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a wound, a memory, and a miracle walking on two broken legs. The cowboy rode tall, the kind of tall that didn't come from height alone but from wealth, from power, from knowing the land beneath him answered to his name. His hat was custom-shaped, his boots hand-stitched, his belt buckle heavy enough to remind everyone who noticed it that success had weight. People moved out of his way without thinking. Some nodded, some stared, some envied. He had crossed deserts and deals, buried rivals and memories, and built an empire out of dust and cattle and iron will. His name carried respect and fear in equal measure. He had learned long ago that softness was expensive, and he had chosen to invest elsewhere. Beside him sat his son, small hands gripping the leather of the saddle, eyes wide and curious, still untouched by the rules that told men what not to see. The boy's mother was gone, taken by sickness years earlier, and the space she left behind had been filled with money, tutors, and silence. The father loved his son in the way he knew how, by protecting him from hunger, from danger, from need. He didn't know how to protect him from truth. They rode through the edge of town where buildings leaned like tired men, and the smell of poverty clung to the air. This was not a place the cowboy usually slowed for. It was something to pass through, something that existed because the world was uneven and always would be. He told himself that fairness was a fairy tale, that survival belonged to the strong. That belief had made him rich. Near the old feed store, crouched low beside a post splintered by time, sat a beggar woman. Her clothes were layered and torn, colors faded into one another like bruises that never healed. Her hair was tangled, her face marked by dirt and age and something deeper, loss carved so deeply it had changed the shape of her bones. One hand rested on her knee, the other stretched out just enough to suggest hope without daring to demand it. Most people didn't look at her. Those who did looked through her. The cowboy didn't slow. He had seen hundreds like her across towns and borders. Tragedy, he believed, multiplied if you acknowledged it. Best to keep riding. That was when his son leaned closer, voice trembling, barely louder than the creak of leather and the wind. "Father, that's Ma." The world did not stop, but something inside the cowboy did. His breath caught, sharp and painful, like he'd inhaled dust instead of air. He laughed once, short and dismissive, because the alternative was unthinkable. "Don't be foolish," he said, though his eyes had already betrayed him, flicking back toward the woman as if pulled by a rope he couldn't cut. "Your mother is dead." The boy shook his head, eyes never leaving the beggar. "I remember her eyes," he whispered. "She used to sing to me when I was sick. She held my face like this." He lifted his small hands, mimicking a memory no child should have been able to keep so clearly. "That's her." The cowboy turned fully then, anger rising because fear always dressed itself that way in him. He looked hard, cruelly, the way he had learned to look at problems before crushing them. And for a moment, nothing happened. Just another broken woman. Just another lie the world told children when they wanted something to make sense. Then the beggar lifted her head. Their eyes met. Time didn't explode. It collapsed. The cowboy felt the ground tilt, memories flooding back without permission. A younger woman laughing in a kitchen too small for dreams but big enough for love. Hands stained with flour, hair falling loose from a braid. The way she used to say his name like it mattered. The night she disappeared after an argument so sharp it cut both of them. He had searched for weeks, then months, then less and less, until grief hardened into certainty. She was gone. Dead, probably. That was easier than guilt. The woman's lips parted. No sound came out, but her face changed in a way no strangers ever could. Recognition passed over her like a shadow, then fear, then something like shame. She tried to look away, but it was too late. The boy had already slid off the saddle and was running. "Ma!" he cried, his boots slapping against the dirt, arms open like the world had never taught him disappointment. People turned. Whispers sparked. The cowboy shouted his son's name, reaching out, but his voice felt thick, useless. He dismounted too late. The boy crashed into the woman, burying his face against her chest as if he belonged there, as if he always had. She broke. A sound tore out of her that didn't resemble language. She wrapped herself around him, fingers shaking, clutching him like he might vanish if she loosened her grip. Tears carved clean paths through the dirt on her face. She rocked him, whispering his name over and over, a prayer, a confession, a wound reopened and finally allowed to bleed. The cowboy stood frozen, surrounded by a crowd that suddenly cared very much about something they didn't understand. Pride, rage, disbelief, hope, everything battled inside him, none of it winning. He took a step closer, then another, boots heavy as if walking through mud. "Is it you?" he asked, hating how small his voice sounded. She looked up at him, eyes red, blazing, broken. "You left me," she said, not loud, not dramatic, but with a weight that made the air ache. "You chose your anger over your family. I waited. I begged. When I had nothing left, I disappeared because I thought you'd be better without me. That's not—" He stopped. The truth rearranged itself in his chest. He had told himself a story for years, one where he was the victim of fate. Now the mirror stood in front of him, cracked but honest. "You were rich," she continued, bitterness threading her words. "I was hungry. Pride doesn't feed you. Love doesn't keep you warm at night when the world decides you're invisible." The boy pulled back, looking between them, confused but unafraid. "Why didn't you come home, Ma?" She kissed his forehead, tears falling onto his hair. "Because I didn't think I was allowed anymore." The cowboy dropped to his knees without realizing it, dust staining his fine clothes, wealth meaningless in the dirt. For the first time in years, he didn't care who saw. The town blurred. All that existed was the woman he thought he'd buried, and the child who had resurrected her. "I was wrong," he said. The words felt like knives and medicine at the same time. "I don't know how to fix this, but I won't walk past you again. Ever." Silence followed, thick and uncertain. Redemption doesn't arrive with trumpets. It stands awkwardly, waiting to be chosen. The woman studied him, measuring not his money but his fractures. She had survived things he couldn't imagine. Trust would not be cheap. "Then don't just kneel," she said quietly. "Stand up and mean it." He stood. And in that moment, the richest cowboy in the land understood that everything he owned was worth less than what he had almost lost forever. This is where the road truly begins. The town didn't return to normal after that day. It pretended to, the way people do when something too big happens in front of them. Doors opened and closed, wagons rolled by, money changed hands, but the air had shifted. Everyone had seen the richest cowboy in the region kneel in the dirt before a beggar woman. Everyone had seen tears where pride used to live, and nobody knew what to do with that image. The cowboy walked beside her now instead of ahead. That alone felt strange to him. He had spent a lifetime leading, commanding, riding forward while others followed or fell behind. Walking next to someone required awareness. It required slowing down. His son held the woman's hand with fierce certainty, like a soldier guarding a treasure, afraid that if he let go for even a second, the universe might steal her back. They didn't go to the Grand Hotel on Main Street. The cowboy didn't suggest it. He faux loud as she led them to the edge of town, to a leaning shack patched together from old boards and stubborn hope. The place smelled of damp wood and poverty, but also of survival. It was where she had lived for years while the world forgot her. Inside, the light was thin. A single chair, a small stove, a blanket folded carefully, as if order could be a form of dignity. The cowboy stood there, his wealth suddenly loud and obscene. He took off his hat without thinking, fingers gripping the brim too tightly. "You live like this?" he asked. She shrugged, a small motion loaded with history. "I lived." The boy looked around, eyes absorbing everything. "Did you think about me?" he asked softly. "Every day," she answered without hesitation. "I talked to you when I was alone. I imagined your voice so I wouldn't forget it." Something cracked in the cowboy's chest. He had bought his son toys imported from across the world. Tutors with perfect accents, beds softer than clouds. And yet the boy had missed this woman with a hunger that none of it could fill. "We're not staying here," the cowboy said suddenly, too quickly. "You're coming with us. You don't belong in this place." She turned to him slowly. "You don't get to decide that anymore." The words stung because they were true. Power had always answered to him. Now it hesitated. "I'm not trying to command you," he said, forcing his voice steady. "I'm trying to fix what I broke." "You can't fix years with one good intention," she replied. "I had to become someone else to survive. I don't know if the woman you remember still exists." He swallowed. "Then let me get to know the woman you are now." The boy squeezed her hand. "Please," he said. That single word carried more weight than all the cowboy's wealth. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, something like resolve settled in. "I'll come," she said, "but not as someone you rescue. I come as a mother, as an equal, or I don't come at all." "Equal." He agreed immediately. He would have agreed to anything. The ride back to the ranch felt unreal. The gates that usually opened like obedient servants seemed to hesitate, as if the land itself sensed the shift. The house rose in the distance, wide and proud, built to impress and intimidate. The woman slowed her steps as they approached it, uncertainty tightening her shoulders. "I don't belong in a place like this," she murmured. "You belong with us," the boy said, certain. "That's the place." Inside, servants froze. Whispers ignited like dry grass. The cowboy's reputation had been forged in control and distance. Now he walked in with a beggar woman at his side and a child holding them together like a bridge. No orders were given, none were needed. People felt the gravity of the moment. He gave her a room overlooking the fields, sunlight pouring in like forgiveness. She stood in the doorway, overwhelmed, hands trembling. "This is too much," she said. "So was losing you," he replied. That night, the house didn't sleep. The boy refused to leave her side, curled against her like the years apart had never happened. She stroked his hair until he drifted off, tears soaking into expensive sheets that had never known sorrow before. The cowboy stood outside the door for a long time, listening to the quiet rise and fall of his son's breathing. Guilt pressed down on him harder than any enemy ever had. He had built an empire and called it success, but it had cost him the only thing that mattered. In the days that followed, reality pushed back. Town leaders questioned her presence. Old associates whispered warnings. "People will see this as weakness," they told him. "Your image matters." He looked at them with eyes that had finally learned something. "Let them see," he said. "I'm due." "Nay, pretending strength means cruelty." The woman struggled too. She flinched at kindness, expected rejection behind every smile. She didn't trust comfort. It felt like a trap. At night, memories returned. Cold streets, empty stomachs, humiliation that never fully fades. One evening, she found him in the barn, sitting alone, staring at nothing. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "No," he answered instantly. "I regret every day before it." She studied him, searching for the man who had abandoned her, measuring him against the one sitting in front of her now. Change, she realized, wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was choosing differently when no one was watching. Trouble came faster than healing ever does. Rumors spread. A rival rancher saw opportunity. If the mighty cowboy could be shaken by a woman from the streets, perhaps his grip on power wasn't as tight as everyone believed. The woman overheard the whispers first. She stood in the mirror that night, looking at her worn reflection, and an old thought returned like poison. I am the weakness. She began packing before dawn. The boy woke and saw her. Panic flooded his face. Where are you going? She knelt, holding his cheeks, heart breaking all over again. I won't be the reason they hurt you. He ran, screaming for his father. The cowboy arrived, breathless, eyes wild. What are you doing? I'm leaving, she said. For him. No, he said, voice shaking. You don't get to decide that alone anymore either. They'll come for you, she insisted. They already are. Let them, he replied. I didn't find my family just to lose it to fear. She stared at him, really looked, and for the first time since that day in the dirt, she believed him. Outside, the sun rose over the land he owned, the land she now stood on as more than a ghost. Inside, 3 broken lives pressed together, not healed yet, but healing. And, far beyond the fences, enemies watched, waiting for the moment when love would be tested by fire. That moment was coming.